Welcome to the E-Free Lethbridge podcast. It's so great that you are joining us. It's a little bit of a different scenery for me today. I'm in my bedroom. There's lots of people in our house. It's very, very different here. So not random people, family that kind of came in. Family.
Randoms.
Yeah, don't worry, my house is not full of random people. That's not what's happening. But there's people at our house. So my office has now moved to my bedroom for podcast for tonight only. So
one night only.
one night. I don't. Yeah. All right. With us today, we have the Wonder Woman extraordinaire, Glenda Postman.
Hi, everyone.
She is back.
She's back.
It's gone 1 week.
Yeah.
You were not a month.
It was a big week. You survived the class.
Yeah.
I did survive the class.
Yeah, returning from online school. We also have the young at heart, Luke Watson.
Greetings. Happy Labor Day.
And yeah, happy Labor Day. Not to confuse the young at heart with the lighthearted Jeremy Light is also joining us.
Yes.
Wait, Levi, you don't have like a tagline. You are what?
And I'm your host, Levi.
Yeah.
And we are going to kick things off with a fun morning question.
Yeah.
Oh, my favorite part.
So today's fun morning question, this one has got me a little bit shook. I don't know how I'm going to answer it. If you were arrested with no explanation, what would your friends and family assume you had done?
Trespassing.
Oh,
Trespassing.
I don't even need to think about it.
Just
okay.
Where?
You've been arrested for trespassing.
No, but I'm
Okay.
always a little bit tempted. So you know when I remember we were in like this museum and they had this like famous piece of art kind of in this museum. They had all these red cords around it. And then they had this one chair like off to the side. And it was this red, gilded, beautiful chair. And I was just like, I wonder if I could sit in that chair. I just wanted to sit in the chair. I feel like, but it was behind the red cord.
No,
Well,
yeah.
I thought about it. Keenan's a really good conscience, and he's like, "You stop it." But whenever something's cordoned off, don't you just want to like put your foot over? Be like, "What you gonna do?"
Yes.
is that an arrestable offense?
Well, I just think trespassing. Like,
Yeah. Going into places you shouldn't be.
you're not supposed to be. Yeah.
Yeah.
Like,
Yeah.
or if you're not supposed to take a picture. Like, I remember this is bad, but we were like at the some behind the scenes studio tour or something in Hollywood, and then I like take a picture. They're like, "Don't take any pictures, and if you do, delete them." I'm like, "Oopsie."
I'm keeping that one.
That's a classic. Don't
I just
take
want to go
pictures.
behind the red cords. Why did they do that?
Okay, there was this.
You shouldn't come to church.
This was
Yeah,
literally.
she's in all the rooms that are like, don't go in. This has been cleaned.
Luke,
Glenda's like, I'll check it out.
so Luke did because
Hey, hey, I'm not the trespasser. I'm not the trespasser.
I think I had this
Luke
dilemma
answers also
yesterday.
trespassing.
That's good.
So there's a private property sign. So there was a fire yesterday on the west side. And so we were like, oh, let's go check it out. So we were driving
That's
towards
what
it.
smoke was.
If you take, I don't even know the west side very well, so people might have to like let me know. But there's like this road that kind of goes to that new community. What's the new like circles, the roundabout road? What's that one called?
Gary Station,
There's Gary Station, and then there's one that's like
Sunridge.
nope.
Oh,
North.
beside Gary Station.
Yeah, whatever that community is,
Yeah.
it's north of Gary Station.
Mhm.
But like there's that road that's like on the very end of town. Does that make sense?
Yeah.
And so you take that road and you keep going, and we're driving towards the fire. We've never been past there. And so then you go down and there's like a community there that's like Cooley something, or I don't know. And you go down in the coulees and you are on a gravel road. There is a house down there that is gigantic. It is like a castle, and it says private property, and I want to go closer. I need to see this house. So if anyone knows,
Yes,
Glenda,
also,
you gotta go
trespassing.
down there.
Glenda,
You should go on a
whose
road
house
trip.
it is. Yes.
You on a road trip?
Or if you've never been there and you want to go, just go explore it. There's this huge house. It's so cool. Anyways, I didn't trespass, but I was
don't
tempted.
either. I just want to.
But that's what you get arrested for.
Oh, that's good.
What are you
Man,
going to get arrested for?
I would be. I just asked Ruthie because I didn't. I was thinking about it, and then I'm like, "What a great question!" So I asked Ruthie, and she said, like, pretty quickly, "Fraud."
What?
I'm like, babe, come on. She just holds some,
You're gonna go get
credit card
justice.
applications over my head.
You're going to go get justice back for that guy who sold you a bad laptop when you were 20. Fraud?
Fraud.
I know. I feel like I need to explain that. It's not like I'm afraid.
I feel like you need
Wow.
to explain that too.
In my
You're on trial now.
Oh man, in my past, I've smudged some details on a credit card application. Goodness me, I got to be careful.
Oh.
How much money do you make? And you're like, is there a minimum income? Yes, there is. Okay.
Oh,
I guess we can't take it back now. We're
Okay. Well, we're all going to get fired, but go ahead, Jer.
I'd say
funny, guys.
I asked. So I did the same thing. I asked Christine. I'm like, what would I get arrested for? Because I'm like, I don't know. And she said, mistaken identity, I guess. Like, I am a good person, guys. I'm a good person.
Mistaken identity?
Yeah. Somebody thought I was Jeff Heth, and they arrested me because he's a. No, I'm just kidding.
Wow.
So maybe that. Man, I'm a rule follower,
Ooh.
so it's hard for me.
Man, even stuff to do with photo radars, I could probably see myself getting arrested for it, Jared.
Just straight up.
Guys, I had a warrant out for my arrest already one time in the last decade.
What?
Wow.
Yes.
Share the story.
Oh.
I accidentally went to Las Vegas when I was supposed to be at jury duty.
Oh, yeah.
And there is,
that could be
you
your-
get in so much trouble. So they put a warrant out for my arrest, went to my kid's school, went to my parents, and they're like, where is she? And they're like, she's in Vegas. But Keenan had a last minute trip, so he's like, just come with me. You just have to fly down there. You can stay for free. I'm like, sure. So last minute, like the day before, was like, I got nothing on the calendar. Go down there. And then I was walking around by myself and got a phone call from police saying, where are you? Like, Vegas?
They take that seriously.
They're like, well, we
Wow.
don't sure you can get back in the country because there's a warrant out for your arrest. I'm like, no.
Yeah,
I
that's
could
wild.
not believe I forgot. I got called. I've been called for jury duty 6 times.
How is
Man,
that?
people don't even get called for their whole life.
I've never
I
been
know.
called.
I got called once, but I didn't make it to the. They filled the jury before they called my number.
Okay.
Yeah.
Nice.
I want
That's
to be
happy
called.
with
Oh. No, you
I
wouldn't.
thought I did until I was sitting there. So, Glenda, have you ever had to be on a jury?
No, I got short like on the thing once, but then got excused for something.
Oh, so they called
I
you up
was-
to the front even.
Very tempted to like show up wearing like a Teletubby costume or something. I don't know.
See that
I'm like, don't pick
I
me.
feel like that is how you get a warrant out for your arrest.
Oh, I did have a warrant out for my arrest one time.
Wow. I don't know if I've ever had a warrant out for my arrest. I don't think so. I would know, right?
No, yes, you would know.
Okay, good.
Yes,
So I have whatever I would get arrested for, it's probably something stupid. I remember when I was younger, I'm pretty afraid of police. Yes, when I see flashing lights, if I'm in my vehicle, either I chase it because I want to see what happened, or I start panicking and try and run. So it would probably be like resisting arrest. Like they're not even trying
Evading.
to arrest me.
Yeah.
And I would be running. That's why they would arrest me.
I
Because
just running.
clearly I'm guilty because I'm running away. Yes. And so as a kid, I remember one time we ran from the police because we were tying yarn across the highway. And yes, exactly. Just stupid stuff like that. So that the cars would go through it, break it, and it was funny. Well, and then the police showed up to say that we can't do that. And we just started running and they chased us. And they said, you're not in trouble. You just can't do that. Anyways. Yarn. Yeah. Stupid.
I think we got in trouble for throwing snowballs at cars too. The cops pulled over and stopped us. Yeah.
We used to do like ketchup packets, rip them, like open it and then throw them at the cars and then it would splatter. Yeah. Terrible.
Jeremy, you should be like civil disobedience.
Yeah.
Have a sit-in.
Yeah, totally. I could see that. Standing up for somebody. I also, as I'm thinking about it.
Why are you all the ones you're picking holy ones?
You know what? When you're as good a person as I am. Just kidding.
Or never been called for jury duty.
Yeah, I have been. But
yeah, you have been.
But I have to say, I could see I have a fighter. So in fight or flight, apparently I'm fight. So that could be something.
Fighting.
Yeah.
Okay.
So if I get scared, I throw up my fists pretty quick.
I thought Luke was going to say fighting because he's like blowing off some steam in his garage and people are going to arrest him for
bringing in the garage. Yeah, that's what
police are going to come and be like, arrest him just to calm him down.
Yes. Listen here, buddy.
Jared, somebody shows up your backyard, boom, game time. Cops show up.
I'm I don't like conflict, but if I'm startled, so almost, well, I told this story in the sermon about like the time that the guy showed up, walked down the middle of the aisle and was going towards, right? Didn't I tell that in a sermon one time? I think so. Anyways, and was going towards Pastor Ian at the time. And I was out of my seat ready to tackle him. That's my initial response. Almost punched a kid once because he decided to hide at the bottom of the stairs and scare me in a church when I was coming down the stairs. I recognized him just in time. So, yep, I could see myself getting arrested for those things.
That's what you're going to get arrested for. Saving someone in church. Still a holy one.
Yeah.
Oh, that's funny.
Oh, man. We should think of all the holy things to get arrested for. And then we can make a poster for Jared's office.
Yeah. Yes, come on.
Bible smuggling, like all those kind of things.
No, I'm too scared. I'm too scared to do stuff like that, guys.
Oh,
I'm a chicken. That's the whole thing. I'm until you startle me and throw fists.
You guys remember
Jared's gonna get arrested for fist fighting.
Yeah. I was gonna say, you remember when you go to a hockey game, you sign up for a credit card to get the free stuff?
No, because that's
Superstore.
No,
that's Superstore.
No, nobody does that. Only you.
Fraud.
Yeah. Oh, that's good.
Yes. All right, I think it's time to get to the message. So this week we had Pastor Jeremy sharing Jesus's words in Matthew 5:13-16, which says, "You are the salt of the earth, but if the salt loses its saltiness, how can it be made salty again? It is no longer good for anything except to be thrown out and trampled underfoot. You are the light of the world. A town built on a hill cannot be hidden. Neither do people light a lamp and put it under a bowl. Instead, they put it on its stand, and it gives light to everyone in the house. In the same way, let your light shine before others, that they may see your good deeds and glorify your Father in heaven." Jer, you pushed us towards being for our community, for our neighbors, and especially for our neighborhood. And this passage, it talks about salt and light, and Jesus seems to be saying that his disciples will shape society in significant ways. One way in particular being distinct from culture. What do you guys think it means to be distinct?
I think often when I hear about that, I automatically jump to like kind of a purity or a holiness type of mindset, and that's not unimportant. That is important. Paul talks a lot about those things in terms of the behaviors that we should put on and the attitudes that we should put on and things like that. When I look at the Gospels, though, it seems like the primary thing is that what should make us distinct is our love for one another and our love for God. And so that gets more humbling, because I just talked about how, like, out of fear I can live up to the rules. But when it's a standard like love that doesn't have a really good or an easy measuring stick except for the cross, man, that makes it harder. And I think that's one way that we could stand out that would sort of surprise our world.
I was thinking similarly about Romans 12 that talks about being a living sacrifice. So that it is not in just, it's easy to think too of the things that we should put away. Like First Peter would talk about that, right? Like put away malice, deceit, envy, slander. Anyway, hypocrisy maybe. So put those things away, and then put, like, instead we imitate Christ. But really, I think what this is calling to is just this living sacrifice. And that's pretty, I think that's pretty radical idea, that this actually is costly and weighty, I think.
Yeah, I appreciate you guys went to the, I think often when we think of the distinct, you're right, Jerry, we go, moral living in a sense, just be a good person. And that's not as radical, perhaps, as the, like, love your enemies is the costly sacrifice. I appreciate that.
I think
go ahead. Sorry,
Jerry.
go ahead. No, go ahead, Levi.
I was just going to say, I think, Jerry, you're right in the fact that people, when they hear this, like, we need to be distinct from culture, they automatically go to holiness. And obviously we should be pursuing holiness. We should be pursuing God and Jesus, and in that finding holiness. But I think generally or universally, people make mistakes. Like, that's something that, like, you don't have to be from the Christian faith to realize that people make mistakes. And because of that, people don't follow perfection. People follow passion. And it would be like, there's political leaders, people will follow them even when they're not perfect, even though they make so many mistakes. We get it. We're human. We all understand people making mistakes. And so mistakes aren't, like, being perfect isn't what is going to set you apart from culture. But your passion, the way that, like, what you follow and what you're for. So if you're radically for community, that is going to set you apart from the average person, especially in North America, who's so individually minded. Like, and so I don't know. I think it's a difference of, like, passion over perfection. But
it's interesting, though, that is saying not just what we're against, it's saying what we're for, right? Because often we think in order to be distinct, it's the things that we're going to remove ourselves from and not push us towards. It's a good thought, Levi.
And I like the sacrificial piece too, Glenda. That fits into that individualism or individualistic thinking piece as well. When we aren't just out for ourselves, it changes. If it's not just for benefit for me, it changes. It makes us distinct. It makes us stand out. And I wonder too, as Levi, just as you were talking, like, I was reading about the kind of the effects of the cancel culture and how it relates to the gospel. And I wonder, like, being a community of forgiveness will also allow us to be distinct, where we don't just write people off and say, okay, you're done. There's no redemption for you. We offer and tell stories of redemption.
That's good.
So, Jeremy, you remind us that the answer is not always in isolation, but rather active engagement. What ways can we, or have you guys been actively engaged?
and this might be, but I really appreciate the call to prayer today, Jer. And I think that's something I know we've talked about on the podcast before, but where's I think it's in First Peter as well. But where Peter's saying like the end of world is coming. And I love that because I think oftentimes we're like, I'm going to be the guy that preaches the gospel on the plane when it's going down, right? And it's like we have all these scenes of like, now it's the time to say, repent, the end is near. And Peter just says like, so make sure you pray, make sure you're hospitable. And there's one other thing he says, and I wish I had it here, but that prayer piece really, really struck me today, is that is something that I am actively engaged in, but I just think the Lord is continually pressing that into me more. Just like, this is where you need to engage. Like, yeah, that's great. You got good relationships with neighbors and all these things, but I want you here first. So that's just how he's been speaking to me personally. I got to get that text. Where's that verse?
Chair's looking it up.
Nice, Chair. I'm a master at quoting verses without not knowing what they are.
Somewhere. Paul does that too, though, right? Doesn't he? In one of his like, somewhere it says something about this, and he just kind of quotes it, but doesn't give any reference. See, hearing in company. Yeah.
Well, even in this passage, really, Jesus is saying it's going to get hard, and these are the things that are like right before that, right? He's saying these are the things that are coming, and these things are going to be hard, and yet you're going to love in them. So I do think that relates, Luke, and I think it's, for me, it's just realizing that real love is costly, and we don't always think it is. We think it's like fuzzy and warm and lovely and fairy dusty, but we forget how gritty it is and really what it costs us. So it reminds me to not be quick to walk away, to stay in even when things are hard, and not to take the easy way all the time, but that God has placed me in the places where I'm planted for his purposes, maybe.
Yeah, and I'd say related to that, I've been probably over the last year and a bit seeking more active engagement by beginning to get engaged in our neighborhood, in our community here at Lakeview. So started by having just people that I had connection with or had email addresses for that went to our church, and just said, hey, let's start building community here and having people over at our house. And so COVID has definitely slowed that down a little bit, or shifted some of the things that we've been able to do, but I'm looking forward to the community parties coming up. It's given us another opportunity. Just we've had, because we're planning to do it on our street, so we had to get permission from everybody on our street. So Christine did that because last week was super busy for me, but just another opportunity to knock on doors and get to know some people and say, hey, this is what we're doing, and get some excitement. So that's been an area for sure. Another area that came to mind when I was thinking about the question that I really liked being actively engaged in was back when I was a chaplain for the Hurricanes. And so I gave that to Mark when I went away to school, and he's been doing a phenomenal job with that and taking it over. But that was something that, yeah, definitely I enjoyed doing, because it was just so different, so refreshing in so many ways from kind of the normal kind of churched conversations that I would get. So yeah, it was really good.
So kind of flipping the question from where you guys have been actively engaging, where do you guys feel God is asking you to make space in your life so you can live engaged?
You know, it's funny, Levi, out of some prayer, one thing that's come up for me is that I need to engage, or not need to, but I think God's calling me, along with what Glenda was saying, but just to engage with some post-church people, some people that are hurt by the church, angry with the church, and not to sit, but just to sit there and the second L, the L in bless, and just listen. I think too often the Lord was reminding me of today is just that it's too easy to defend or take things personally, instead of just listen, be present, and hopefully, yeah, that's it. Just listen and be present. I was going to say, hopefully, but it's like, no, that's the call. But I just, for some reason, the Lord just impressed that on me today. It's like, it seems like in this season, And COVID's kind of brought up all these things, and it's kind of shooken up the church a bit, and some of these hurts and pains and anger come to the top. So that's where I feel the Lord's calling me to kind of actively engage.
Luke, do you you don't have to answer this question right now, but I think one of the things that we need to consider, and I'm going to challenge you on it, is okay, so what are you going to drop to make that happen? Because I know your schedule's full, and I know that your contact list is long. So I think that's part of the question that you need to, we can't just keep adding things on. We need to be pruning to our fruitful core, to borrow a directional statement. And that's hard. But yeah, I think in some cases we can add things on, but we need to really ask that question. Is this replacing something in my life? And how am I going to make space for it?
Right.
Going with that, Jer, maybe we're going a little bit of a different direction here, but something that I've been asking myself lately is what kind of comes first? So you look at your pack schedule, you're like, oh man, I've got all these things and I need to add this in. And so do you do like a transfer, like I'm going to take this out and put this in, like a plug and play kind of thing? Or do you guys think it's better in our lives to maybe take something out, give it like, I don't know, 2, 3, I don't know how many months you need to, because I have never done this, but I feel like this might be something that we should be doing. You take like 3 months with that being just gone, and then you like think about what to plug it with. Like, you know what I mean? Like what's the best strategy here as we're calling our church to be moving towards thinking about their neighbors, thinking about their community. And that obviously is going to take plugging something in. And right now, I'd say the average person I talk to has no room for that. So they have to take something out. So should we be encouraging people to take something out first and not immediately just plug something in? Or what's your guys' thoughts?
That's good.
We fill our time though. Like, I don't know. Maybe you guys have way less spare time than me, but I have times where I literally waste time. So I think that it's not so much of like ripping something out and trying to insert something in. I feel like it's just broadening my lens a little bit to say, okay, there's purpose in this relationship. There's purpose, like this is actually, there's intentionality in here, and I'm going to give value and time and attention to praying for this, with this person, for this person. I like want to make sure I remain in this relationship. I want to, like, I guess when I was praying about it too, when we had that moment, like that kind of time today, I don't feel like God was saying like rip things out and shove things in. I feel like he's saying like sometimes I get a little off balance. So these are the people who are in my life and my relationship. And I understand that sometimes maybe you don't know any of your neighbors, or you don't know any. And so that's going to take a little bit of intention. But do you think we really have like no time to add those things? Maybe you guys don't, I don't know, but I think I do.
Yeah, I think that it's a little bit of both. And I just think in terms of like, to pick on Luke for a second,
yes.
right?
I found the verse in 1 Peter.
Yay!
Yeah, that's awesome. We'll come back to that. That's awesome. Is like, not actually, this isn't picking on Luke. We can't do that infinitely though, right? And so at some point we are making choices. And I do think like one of the first things to look at is like, God, am I wasting time? It's like, not just seasons of rest or times of rest and recreation. Those are important. We need those. But to honestly, like, is God the Lord of my calendar? And to lay that before him and just say, like, what do I need to take out? What am I wasting time on? Where have I think for me, one of the things is, so two things came up for me in this. One was sit down with Christine and just, let her look at my schedule and let's have the conversation. Where am I spending too much time, and what do I need to cut back on? What do I need to add in? And the other piece was stop seeing yourself as the savior. So if I don't do it, it's not going to get done. Well, then I'm the Messiah. I'm the savior.
Right.
And I just have to like recognize I can't do all the things.
Yeah.
And so, yeah, I mean, last week and this week up until Thursday, there was no time in my schedule to do things. So if I was going to add anything else in, I definitely had to take something else. So, but that's also just a, couple weeks.
That is true. And it's the unique position of your job. Like in my job, I actually don't do most of the things. I equip and support people to do most of the things. Yeah. So I think like really our role in the church is not to do the things, but to ensure that other people can do the things. So but when that doesn't, we do bear the weight of that too. But
so I think ultimately it's just like the things I don't think we're pointing out that there's evil things in my schedule necessarily, except that have I just filled it without? Have I put those things before God? Is this something that I should put time into and energy?
Yeah.
So transform people equal transformed culture. Jeremy, you told a story about how people have gone into communities to bless and others have gone into communities to convert. Do you guys think there's a difference in this, and why does it matter?
And Jared, what was the stat on that? That struck me as well. That
50 times more.
50 times more conversions with the blessing initiative.
Yeah.
Were you talking about like that and the initiative at the end? Is that what you're talking about?
No, they just went in. I mean,
just going into
they didn't
think
use
about
the
blessing
acronym so much. I don't know. I don't think, but just went in to bless. That's what they're going to do. How can we help people in our community, this community, our neighborhood that we're going into?
I think converting focuses on something that we can't actually achieve, because actually salvation doesn't belong to us, but blessing is something we actually can't. I mean, we can focus on and work towards. That's my initial thought.
And I think
the agenda piece too. Sorry, Jared, go.
No, go, Luke. Go ahead.
Well, I just get like that struck me too, Jared. I'm like the agenda piece. I remember a friend of mine told me a story that he asked a guy out for lunch, and he didn't really know the guy very well. And the guy went out for lunch with him and said, "Okay, so what? Do you want to sell me Amway, or what's the pitch?"
Yeah.
And he just said, "You know what? Actually, I just wanted to buy you lunch and get to know you a little bit." And that was honestly his intention. But I mean, that just disarmed this guy, right? And they were able to share life together. And I think going in with the agenda, or I think that does cause tension and stress for people, and it takes away from just authenticity, being real, being yourself. Because as you said, Jared, if I'm transformed, that's going to come out of me.
I think there's at the base level, there's not much. I mean, in the actions, there's a difference, but in the motivations, I don't want to judge the motivation, right? Because we believe as followers of Jesus that the best thing for someone is to be in relationship with Jesus. So really, that is a blessing. But when I go in with with sort of I think the agenda is a good word of that. And this is where I struggle. So I've had conversations, I mentioned it in the sermon, about like people kind of saying, so like, we're going to get people together and then
what's the hook?
We're going to drop tracks on them. We're going to what are we actually going to do when we get them together? And I'm just like, no, our whole point is to just build relationship, just get you in contact with people. And when I first started with the community, more the community group idea than the community party idea, so that this would be an ongoing thing and ongoing relationships that are formed. Somebody was asking me about this, like, is our goal to get them saved? Is this really for everybody? And I didn't answer the question very well because I wasn't sure where it was coming from at the time. But as I kind of processed the question, I think I understand a bit more. Of course, I want to say yes, because that's what I think. I am convinced that that's the best thing for people, is to be in relationship with Jesus. But at the same time, it's not my agenda. You know what I mean? Like, it's not my, I hope it happens, but I'm not going to to put my hands on the conversation or on situations to manufacture those things. I'm just going to be there.
Hmm.
And I think this is where Bless comes in really well. Like, listen, build relationships, serve, and then they'll tell you how to love them. You'll hear it. And then
It sounds, the words around it sound so limiting too. Like, do you want just people to be conversion? Like, it doesn't sound like, really, we want people to follow Jesus. We want them to know him and love other people. Like, we're calling them not into one moment, we're calling them into a life. And so I feel like that some of those words or some of those ideas around that feel so limiting, and it feels like a little bit like an Amway pitch. Really. Sorry if you saw Amway.
I remember. So
Luke said it first.
Yeah, Luke said
Get in your house, put the video on. Yeah.
There's a series of videos that you can find on an evangelism method that I will not name right now, just in case I get a little slanderous or something like that. But anyways, I watched a couple of them, and one of them in particular broke my heart, because in it, this like Christian celebrity confronts this guy on the street, and essentially like, why should God let you into heaven? And you could see this guy, he's on this journey of like, oh, I want to know more about this. And the end of the encounter is like, hey, good luck with that. And they walk away. And I'm like, that is so sad. Like, this person needs somebody to be in, doesn't need this one-time encounter. And yes, by God's grace, God can use that in that person's life. And that's awesome. And sometimes we have these one-time encounters that are inspired by the Spirit. This was manufactured. This was a manufactured conversation, according to a script. And the end of it, the guy didn't make a decision for Christ, but he was clearly interested in learning more. And it was like, okay, good luck. And I don't know if they said good luck, but sort of that thing, like, okay, see you later. Our time is up. And man, that just broke my heart, like, for that person. So this is where I think, we, for sure, if the Spirit moves us quickly into conversations where we can share our story way faster than we thought. I was reading Becky Pippert's Out of the Salt Shaker recently, and she has like these amazing conversations, like sometimes out of relationships, sometimes just like sitting beside somebody on a plane, and it made me a little bit jealous. But like, yes, God can definitely do that, but let's not discredit the work that goes into like just being a witness in the way that we live and relate to the people around us over time, for decades maybe.
Yeah.
Yeah, I'm glad you said that. I think we also get sensitive too to just talking about our faith, and that, like, just because you're talking about your faith doesn't mean you have an agenda either. And I think sometimes we get a little bit overly sensitive, and I'm guilty of this myself. And I'm like, hey, remember Jesus, this big important figure in your life, Luke? Maybe that you should share that a little bit with this person that you appreciate and love. But I'm like, I think we get very sensitive, a little bit shy sometimes, and the Spirit just gives us a little bit of nudge and be like, hey, share. It's
interesting because often that comes when you're trying to like undo an idea of a stereotype too, right? Like, I don't want people to think that this is it, so I'm going to try to be other, and that's not always helpful either. I agree, Luke.
Yeah, totally. Yeah. It's so awkward when I try not to be like, I don't want to fall into the stereotype, and I'm trying to avoid all the traps.
I know.
Just like, I'm so awkward. I'm just like, oh, stop.
But really, you're more concerned about that than probably other people.
Yeah, totally.
So, yeah. People want to have real, authentic conversations that matter, and that lots of times that involves sorrow, lots of times that involves our great joys, lots of times that involves our faith, our walk with Jesus, what we think is going to happen, how we're handling things. I mean, these are all the things that gets dumped on the table in relationship. So I think that's why the little piece of conversion sits funny sometimes with people.
Yeah,
definitely. So just before we go to the hot seat, and just a reminder, if you are wanting to ask a question during the hot seat, you can go to menti.com, use the code 9068530, and we'd love to try and answer that question, or you can just throw it in the comments on Facebook. We can see that, and we would love to get to your question. But one last question here while we're still looking at the message. Jer, you already said this in the podcast, you went over the Blessed Initiative. That is the letters stand for begin with prayer, listen with care, experience together, serve with love, and share your story. Correct? Did I get it?
That's good. Yeah, that's
okay. So this is a way that we can live out our story. What part stands out to you guys today?
I would say the share piece stood out to me today. And as I was thinking about that, I was thinking, I think I would just say not just share my story, but just sharing our stories. Like that at some point, that's what we hope, right? That's what I hope to get to in a relationship. That I get to move in, I get to listen, I get to pray, I get to listen, I get to experience with this person. I get to serve them, and often they will serve me, and then we get to share our stories. I think it's not like a one-way conversation. I think it's but just this idea that we get to share these things together. So I think share stood out to me. And it doesn't place me in the center; it places the relationship in the center, I think.
That's good. Yeah, as I said, the prayer piece again struck me, but also I guess just looking at serve with love. I just that add-on love. I remember Jared's sermon a couple of weeks ago. God's your father, not your employer, and I think too often it's just a mandate. Yes, sir, I'm in. I got to go serve and do all these things. Versus like, well, what about that love piece? Because you notice the difference. When somebody serves with love versus somebody that's just doing it out of obligation. So that struck me today.
And I also love that listen is in there. That is fantastic because, wow, that's a piece that's easy to forget, but to listen to sorrows of people and what they're really saying and asking for.
Yeah, and I'd say that's the piece that strikes me for sure. Prayer as well. I think just reminding that I need God's Spirit with me in every step of this way, and for sure that piece of it. But the listening piece really has stuck out to me. Not just jumping to assumptions or conclusions based on Facebook posts or whatever, or not just like branding somebody as like this is who you are, and so they become sort of this two-dimensional character rather than this fully formed human being created in God's image. And when I stop to listen to them and ask them like, so why do you think this, or whatever it is, what's going on in your life, and those types of things, and really just listening without, again, like Luke, you talked a little bit about this kind of mandate, and I think when we have this conversion mindset, like I'm listening for a hook, right? Like how can I get the gospel in here? How can I get the gospel in here? Rather than just listening to their story. And so that for me, like there's a lot of voices, there's a lot of pain right now in our world. We see it on our streets and demonstrations and things like that, all around the world right now. Man, we should be listening to those things and listening actively, listening with care.
And that listen one has probably never been more relevant than it is right now, because I so badly want to talk sometimes.
That interview that I heard was just astounding too. Like for her to say it, like this isn't exactly how she said it, but like we're so desperate to speak that we speak over one another, and it's okay because we can listen to more than one voice at a time. And I'm like, oh man, how much better would it be if everybody just stopped for a minute and listened, just listen for. So yeah.
Well, I think that wraps up our time talking about this week's message. It's time to move to the hot seat.
Oh, the hot seat.
The hot seat. So we're going to spend a little bit of time here. If you have a question, you can go to menti.com and use the code 9068530. We'd love to try and answer it. Currently, we don't have any new questions in, but I pulled up some questions from our Q&A. This is going to date us a little bit from May. From May, we did a Q&A night. So this wasn't on the podcast. We did a Q&A night, and there's we didn't get to a lot of questions on there. Well, we got to a lot of questions, but there were so many questions that came in that we couldn't, like, in comparison, we couldn't answer them all. And so there's one question, some of them have just expired, like just to do with our current, like, you know what I mean? Like it was COVID in May, and it's like, it's crazy. Like, just like little questions about bridge builders when we were first starting up, like how can I be a part of it? And like, well, we are already rolling with bridge builders. So
what if this goes until July?
Yeah.
Yeah, that one's expired.
That one expired.
Although Levi, we are like bridge builders is going to become important again, I think, because as we head into winter, our gathering opportunities are going to go down in terms of outdoor gatherings, and so that requires a bigger dance. And so I know that we had some people that were bridge builders that backed out. If you're interested still, that was a long time ago, please contact us. We'd love to get some more people connected. So
yeah, I can only imagine with winter coming and people not being in relationship, mental health needs are going to be just like, it was bad in the spring, and I think as summer kind of came, numbers were going down for some need there, and now I feel like just the fact that people won't be in community with each other, it's going to be a rough winter. But there is a question on here that's kind of expired, but I wanted to touch on it so that we can ask the, like, what about right now? And it has to do with COVID. And so the question was from 4 months ago: how can our church better practice lament during COVID? And should we practice lament or just corporate positivity? And now my question is, so we did our best. We tried to do lament. So now what? Like, what's this? Like, there is no end in sight. There's just this middle ground. So maybe we've lamented and we have no end in sight. What do we do?
Keep lamenting?
I think you're right though, Glenda. Like, we have to talk about, we have to celebrate the good things that are happening, and we've been doing that well, but not just at the expense of like, oh, we're going to pretend that nothing is hard about this. We need to talk about what's hard. We need to protest what is, even to God and to one another. Like, I don't like this. So on our chalkboard in our kitchen, on our kitchen fridge right now, in bold chalk is COVID-19 sucks. And that's been on there for a while because it still does. And so, so this is the reality. Going back to school was, for our kids, I don't know if this is everybody's experience, but our kids had a really good week going back to school. It was really great. So we're going to celebrate that. But at the same time, it's still not, it's not like normal. There's still some like difficulties and hardships. So we're going to acknowledge those things. And I think that's what lament really is, to say like, man, this isn't right. This isn't what's best. This isn't what was intended. And we don't like it, and it's hard, and we want it to end. That's lament. And so we live in these cycles of it. So just because we've lamented once or twice as a church, doesn't mean we shouldn't do that corporately again, but we can definitely do that in our individual practices as well.
And that's not going to change when COVID's here or not here. We all have sorrows that come and go in our lives, and joys that come and go in our lives. So that is not going to change. This is how, and I think maybe it made us more like corporately aware because we are all sharing the same sorrow at the same time. And I think there's a bond really around the world in that, right? Like, no matter where you go, there's a bond in that. So that's probably something that we get to do together because of that. But I think that we are very open to, like, we want to have those hard conversations with you. If that's where you are, we just don't want to hear from you when all's good and happy clappy. Like, all of us have experienced sorrow and hardship too. So happy to do that.
It goes to that blessed thing again, right? Where sometimes we just need to listen as people speak the truth of their situation. Sure. And sometimes the best way that we can serve is not to fix the situation, because sometimes it's unfixable, but just to like serve and say, this is not right. It's not right. This is hard.
And just to like hit on that, I think it was corporate positivity thing too. I mean, I totally agree with that. We need to lament. We should do it more often as a church, but also like, I was just struck this morning, like, you know, Apostle Paul in Philippians, I mean, he's in jail. The guy's had hardships. The guy's been beaten, all these things. And he said, Lord, always, again, I say rejoice. And that strikes me because for Paul, he thinks it's like Christians always have a reason to rejoice. So I would just challenge that with the corporate positivity. I don't necessarily like the wording of that, but just to be like, we always have a reason to rejoice as Christians, according to what the Apostle Paul's saying there in Philippians. And I think, yeah, and that's when he's in a very difficult situation as well. So I think there's a little bit of a challenge in there. Not to discount it.
It's like sitting there making a pros and cons list, like, and eventually coming up at the end and saying, I'm counting it joy.
That's good. Yeah.
Even in this, I'm counting it joy. So I've had cancer. I had a near-death experience. My husband had cancer. My mom had ALS. We've lost a baby. Like, I can tell you many of the sorrows that I can put on my little list.
Those things.
And then when I put it, and then when I put it on mental, anyway. And then I put on the pros list, and like, I have walked those things with Jesus, and honestly, I would still say I counted joy. And I mean, sometimes you can't say that in every season of your life, but I hope that in the majority of the time, like, walking with Jesus really does make the difference, that you can count it joy.
I love hearing that, Glenda. That it's just a different take on it. And again, I think I've said this before, when you're walking through that stuff, it might not seem like joy. But when you look back, and that's why I so strongly recommend writing parts of your life out, especially when you're going through these trials, because then you can reflect when you're going through it. You can reflect on the times when you went through something hard and you were like, actually, I count this as a joy now. And yeah, it just puts a different spin on your life. And so as someone walking through chronic illness, that I go through seasons of flare-ups with my Crohn's, it sometimes in that season, it doesn't feel like joy. But if I look back at that little thing in my Bible that goes through all these things, and how he walked through me when I had a bowel resection, and when he walked through it with me when I first was diagnosed and things were really bad, like, there was these moments of joy that I can reflect on, and it helps me get through it. So,
and I like that, Levi. That reminds me of like lots of the Psalms too, right? So like lots of the Psalms actually just recount the history of God walking with his people. And I think that's one of the things we can do is like, this is, not to, again, it doesn't take away from the reality of the situation we're in, but we look back and say, okay, like these questions came in May, we're in September, and there was lots of hard things. Look what God's been doing through this time. Look at the number of baptisms that we've had. Look at the contact that we've had with people. Has it all been good? No, but let's recount that history. And sometimes we almost need somebody to recount it for us, like somebody to come and say, okay, Jeremy, look back on your path. Look at this. God was here, and God was here, and God was here. And you can trust that he will be there for this thing as well. And so that's beautiful. I like that.
Definitely. All right, guys, I think that wraps up the hot seat. It wasn't super hot this week. If you have a question in the future, feel free to send it to us. Obviously, at the end of this, I'm going to say that we might not be doing the live podcast anymore, especially not next week, because we're doing community parties. But our plan is to maybe go back to our regular non-live podcast. But we still will have opportunity for you to ask questions, and we love to encourage you to ask away. Like, that's what we're here for, is to have open, honest conversation, and that's what we want to do with you. And so if you have a question, always feel free to send it in to us. You can email it right on our website. You can get in contact with us, or you can just ask us in person. We'd love to chat with you. And we don't, at least us four, none of us get offended when we have hard questions.
No.
Because that's just part of life, hard questions and wrestling through it. And we might not have the answer, but. And
it shows investment. It shows that you care. I love to hear those questions.
Yeah,
that's
definitely. Good. All right, it's time to move to community time. So this is our last community time because this was the last message of the series. It takes a village, and so obviously there will be community time in the future. But as far as a discussion on the podcast, we are going to put a pause on it after this week, and so let's move into community time. Jesus uses two images when he talks about us being the light of the world: a city on a hill and a lamp in a house. How does a city on a hill speak to you? And what does it call us to do differently than the lamp on a stand?
I was thinking about this idea of the city on a hill, that really the city needs more than one light in it. Like, we matter in a bigger story, not just our own.
Yeah. And sometimes it takes one person to light their lamp first, right? Like, and then others will light it as well. But for me, so this idea of being in this together, that it's not just me as an individual, even though that's the Sunday school song, is "This Little Light of Mine, I'm going to let it shine." It's something that we do together. So as individuals in community with one another, that's what can't be hid. I think that's what he says at the end. A city on a hill cannot be hidden. And so when we shine our light, reflecting the glory of Jesus in community with one another, it'll go noticed.
And far, right? Like far.
Yeah. Well, yeah.
Like, just think of when it's if it's dark at night and there's a city that's like illuminated, how far you can see it. Like the pieces like glow into the sky, so you can see it very far.
Like driving on the highway too, and you can see Lethbridge in the distance.
Yeah.
And
I always think about driving home to Regina, like when we go visit our cousins in Calgary. Man, you could almost see it from like Medicine Hat.
Yeah, I can't stand that drive, but I know you're talking about
Yeah.
You could see it a long way away.
All these people from prairie provinces, like I grew up in the mountains, and so all the people in the prairie provinces they talk about this experience, and I'm like, I've never, like, I'd say the closest thing to this experience is, so I was born in Salmon Arm, and I don't know if people know the Okanagan, but the number one, we had moved to Kamloops, and my family all lived in Salmon Arm, and so we'd go quite often. It's about like 45 minutes drive, but there is a certain pass that you go over, and as you go over it, as soon as you go over it, you can see over the Shuswap Salmon Arms lights. And I remember that because my dad would be like done work, and we would get in the car and drive right after that to my grandma's, and so it'd be dark, and that's how I knew like we're almost there. And as soon as you get over that pass, the lights just bright, shining off the lake. And so that's what I always think of with this city on a hill, even though it's more like city in the valleys. Also
in the valley, yeah, same idea.
Yeah, same idea.
Yeah. And
really, if you have many cities on many hills, I mean, that's a pretty powerful image of what it does in our world, really.
And the beauty of it, right? So just listening to each one of us talk on this, none of us are like, oh yeah, I saw the glow on the horizon and I was like, oh no, whatever. It's like, oh, we're home, and so that also I think fits into this call. Yes, we're supposed to be a beacon at times. Yes, we're supposed to expose evil and darkness in our world. But what Jesus is talking about here is beautiful. It's this beautiful. There's a warmth to it, an attraction of like, oh, that's home. That's where I'm going.
So this is me being honest with our listeners. I didn't write this question. Jerry, you wrote this question. And I think what you're trying to get to here is that there's a difference between the city on a hill and the lamp on a stand. And that whoever, like as Jesus is speaking this, that there's a difference there. And me personally, I've never really looked into this. Like I didn't really look and go, oh, there's a difference between, like, it's just like another way to say it. But do you guys see a difference there between the two?
I think I see a little bit of a difference in the way that it's interpreted, right? So we jump, or sorry, at least I do, and it seems like most of the teaching that I've heard jumps to you are the lamp on the stand, and not so much to you are a city on a hill. And so I think it just is partly a reflection of the individualism of our culture and of our individualistic faith that tells stories about the heroic individual. You can light up your darkness. It's this little light of mine that you have. So I think it's just important. It just struck me as I was thinking about it over this week. Like, we don't really talk about the town or the city on the hill part of it very often. We talk about the lamp on the stand a lot. And so I think the speculation is that in Jesus' day, they would have thought immediately of Jerusalem because it was built on a hill. The presence of God. So there's lots of rich things in there that are richer in community than just the individualistic understanding of it. So yeah, that's, for me, it just was like, oh yeah, yes, I need to light my light. A city on a hill is only lit up if the individual lights turn on.
Yeah, that's a good picture. Yeah,
but I also can do that in community with others, and that's part of what he's calling us.
It's broader, right? Like lighting a lamp if I lit a lamp on my table, like, it's just when I'm in the midst, when I'm near to it, it feels like, I mean, that seems a little more personal in some way, but this is like a declaration. Because when you think of this city that, like, you can see on that hill, or that is lit up at night, or in the day that you can see clearly, like, look at that. That is, and it feels like something to behold in a different way, that it declares in a different way, maybe.
Yeah, definitely. Jerry, you gave a couple examples of how people transformed by Jesus transformed their culture, and we were talking about this a little bit earlier. Can you guys share, either from a personal experience or from history, like if you know of a story, about another time God's people acted like salt and light and shaped their culture? And if you have a personal story, that's even better. I love to hear a personal story, if you know of this kind of stuff.
Man, personal, Levi, let me ponder that one for a while. But just as I looked at that, the one that came to mind was, I got two, but one. Man, the Roman Empire. The reason why the church expanded was not because Constantine became a Christian, even though it had a big impact. But people say no, it's because they took care of the vulnerable. So because Christians cared for the people that nobody cared for. I think it's even written that these people are doing what we should be doing for our people, and we're not. And that's how the Christian message expanded throughout the empire, is because they cared for people. So again, I like how Jared said that it took individuals, but it took a community, and that started a movement that transformed the empire.
It's a good example.
Yeah, that's good.
What was the second one, Luke?
Man, the second one I was thinking about for some reason, man, Tommy Douglas, man, Universal Healthcare in Canada.
Yeah.
You're just nodding.
That's a good one.
I don't know, it came out of nowhere, but I mean, Tommy was a reverend, right, in Saskatchewan.
Yeah.
Politics. The reason why we have universal healthcare is because of Big Tommy there, man. That's wild.
Yeah.
Nice.
I think, like, I'm trying to think of personal examples too, but in like maybe not as dramatic ways. I think when a Bible college it's a little more subtle, right? In a sense, like when a Bible college in a smaller community, not just by the rules that they set up, but it has an effect on the culture of that community. So sometimes there's like a resistance to it as well. So like you hear lots of things about like Bethel, for example, in the States, and the influence that they're having in their city, in their town. But some people are scared about that influence because of the power and things that come along with that, or whatever. But they're definitely having an influence. I think of Southland Church in Manitoba. They've they have taken seriously Jesus' command to care for the orphan and the widow, and so they've started a real movement of fostering and adoption in their church. And it's like it's not uncommon for people to have foster children or have adopted children in their family in that church. Lots of people I talked to seem like they did, and it's having an effect on the foster needs in that area. It's transforming their culture. And I think the long-term effects that it will have is these kids are placed in stable, loving homes, what that will do for society and for the culture down the road as well. We're probably just seeing the tip of the iceberg in that. So those are kind of a couple things that more contemporarily come to mind. I think the one that resonates with me in history is in Romania. When Ceausescu, is that how you say his name? Anyways, he's the dictator at the time. He was coming after religious leaders, and there was a pastor of a church that was standing up to the regime, and they were coming to arrest him. And it was just total nonviolence. People just stood in the square with candles. I remember particularly a story where a guy comes up to the pastor and he's like, "Look what I got." And he opens his coat and the pastor's afraid, like, "Oh no, I'm going to see dynamite or like a gun." And it's just like pockets full of candles that this guy's going to hand out in the square, and how that, because of this love and care for one another, it toppled the regime. I simplified the story. It's told in lots and lots of pages, but those types of things where we see salt and light entering the world and having an impact.
I was thinking the number one thing, if you look up Redding, California, the number one thing on TripAdvisor is Bethel Church. I'm like, wow, I don't know how many cities the church is the number one thing to do on TripAdvisor. Anyway, I digress. I don't have any. I didn't have any. Can't think of a history story except maybe Jimmy Carter, but I'll pass that. Habitat for Humanity. Anyway,
yeah.
I was thinking, actually, my dad. I did something called a genogram this week in my counseling class that was kind of going back generations. And so we went back like 5 generations, and you map it all and you draw lines of healthy connection, unhealthy connection, where there's conflict, where there's peace, where there's respect. And it was really interesting that there was a lot of lines of deep respect that are drawn to my dad. I have 31 cousins, and if you ask any of my cousins who's one of your favorite people in the world, they'd say my dad. He was kind of all of their dad too, and he was just. And then I noticed that like I don't have a history necessarily of faith, and so I saw in this genogram that when they became a history of faith, and now like myself and my sister and our families, like we have these, like everything's changed because he made a decision in a time of crisis, which was like after my grandfather died, and we didn't know what to do. So we went to the one place that had invited us in before, which was an evangelical free church. And it changed like a whole generation because of this, because of my dad. So that's my example.
Yeah, and I think your dad, like his years of leadership on SABC board shape culture there, and then of all the like lives that were, maybe not direct lines to your dad, but like, yeah, for sure, his faithful service has transformed a lot of lives.
Yeah,
through SABC.
And he does it very unflashy, and he does it by mowing the lawn. And for 21 years, he was the chair of SABC board, and then he went out and weed whacked once a week because he just wanted to serve. So he is a tremendous example to me, someone I really admire.
Speaking of mowing the lawn, Glenn, are you going to miss Keenan mowing the lawn so that you can watch with your coffee inside now that it's fall?
I did take a picture of Keenan and me singing karaoke last night. I was going to send it to you. We got the karaoke machine up and running in fine form right now. Fine form.
You should have sent it to me. Then I would have put it up on the on the screen.
Keenan mowing the grass and Glenn and Keenan doing karaoke.
So fun. Like 2 hours last night. It was so good.
That's awesome.
Oh man.
That's so good.
Well, I want to wrap up the show with asking one last question here from you guys. As we look at community parties that are coming up this next week, do we all have community parties happening? I've got one now in my neighborhood. Jer and Luke are in the same neighborhood, and Jer's all about the community, so they've got a party.
Got
Glenda,
the
do
street
you have a
blocked off.
Yeah, we do. Yeah.
Yeah, you've got a party. So, what's one prayer request that you guys have for our community parties next week? And it doesn't have to be specifically about yours, but it can just be about all of them. But
my one is that it would truly be light to our community, that it wouldn't seem that it would. I know we may face some like misunderstanding about what we're doing or whatever. That's totally fine, but that generally it would not seem tone deaf in our current climate, and that it would be seen for what it is, just a desire to build community.
Yeah, I think the same thing. I think that this isn't a way for us to like pull people, like trap people, pull them in. This is a way for us to push out and just say, actually, building goodness in our community really matters. It matters to our city. Our city has like a neighborhood initiative, and it matters to us too. We are here for the good of our city, the good of our neighborhood, the good of our communities. And so for me, I don't know if that makes sense, but more of a push out than pull in.
Yeah, mine would be my one neighbor here. Hopefully he could come and just have a real sense of friendship, I guess, with my neighbors. That's it, just a real sense of friendship.
Nice.
So.
I think it would just be prayer for the Park Meadows neighborhood. I think a lot of people, when I tell them that I live in Park Meadows, they are like, whoa, like I don't know, they think that it's probably like the worst area of the city. And to be honest, like I can see why they would say that. And
Park Meadows.
no,
yeah.
I think that I would just love to see something actually happen. I think overall our communities would probably be pretty scared to come out to an event like this. And yeah, I guess just prayer that people would feel like, I'm not saying like, I mean any season, not just during COVID. Like people would be like, oh, I don't know. And I mean, we've already started a good relationship. I went and prayed for that school on Monday morning, and then one of the teachers there who goes to our church texted me to say thank you, that she was in a meeting, but to say thank you. Then I text back saying, hey, actually, like we were planning on doing the community party at a park, but hey, would it be okay if we did it at the school? Because you guys have a bigger playground and it could be a better place, a more central location. And so then we got the principals now on board with the party. And so like just a little beginning steps of like seeing like, oh, we could actually have like Park Meadows could be reclaimed. We could be for our community.
That's
and we
big
could see
prayer.
some
Love that
stuff. So yeah, that's my prayer request.
It's great.
Nice.
This would usually be the time where we would pray.
Yeah.
We don't do a lot of praying actually on the podcast, but Jared, would you mind just praying for these things, and then that will wrap up our time together.
Nice. And guys, it's been a pleasure to be with you over the summer. Thanks for having me on. I think this is my last official, and I'm looking, I have me on again to sub in, whatever. That's awesome. But I'm looking forward to hearing Mark again on the podcast as well. So it's always fun to listen into you guys. Thanks a lot. Let me pray. God, we thank you for this idea of building community and the opportunity that we have so far with the relative safety in terms of the COVID recommendations and guidelines. And it looks like relatively decent weather, although it's still a week out, so it's hard to tell. So we just lift those things up before you. We pray that, as Glenda had mentioned, that this would be a push out for us rather than a draw in, that we would push out into our communities. We want to make a difference in our neighborhoods and our cities. As Levi prayed that it would bring transformation even to his neighborhood, and the perception of his neighborhood in our city, Lord, and the perception that even the members in the community might have of their own neighborhood. as they start building relationships and start caring for one another and caring for their neighborhood. So Lord, I pray for your pleasure, your favor over these parties. And Lord, we pray for our neighbors. We pray for Luke's neighbor in particular, that he would come out and there'd just be a fun time, an opportunity to experience together and build a relationship together. And for everybody who's listening and for each one of us on the podcast, Lord, that we would have the same response. Thank you for the great response of my neighbors to blocking off our street. And now we've started the conversation. We'll see where it goes from there in terms of just building relationship, getting to know each other. So we hand this over to you. Don't let us take it back, but help us to work hard in the details and in the relational building by your power and in your leading, we pray in Jesus' name. Amen.
Amen.
All right,
Great to have you,
friends.
Jer.
Thanks, guys.
Yeah, it was so great to have you, Jer, with us. I'm sure you'll be back on sometime. I can almost guarantee it. So thanks so much, friends, for your sharing your heart. And thanks if you're listening for staying on the extra 15 minutes as we...
Oh, so chatty today.
Yeah, we were a little chatty today. It was really good. But a reminder, next week we will not be running the podcast. We're taking a week off, and then we should be starting up again when we start up our next series as a church. So we'll see you guys then. Talk to you later.
Bye,
Bye,
Ray.
friends.